selects processes from the job pool and loads them into memory. Clear? This is the working of job scheduler. Then after this, when the job will load into the memory, after that the CPU scheduler will select processes from the memory and allocate CPU for them. Okay, this is the function of the CPU scheduler. So the difference between job scheduler and CPU scheduler is what? The job scheduling is the mechanism to select which process has to brought into the ready queue, and the CPU scheduling is the mechanism to select which process has to be executed next and allocate the CPU to that process, right? So they are saying also the job scheduling is also known as the long-term scheduling, and the CPU scheduling is also known as the short-term scheduling. So the difference is clear. Job scheduling is what is done by the long-term scheduler or the job scheduler, and the CPU scheduling is done by the short-term scheduler. Now you can see the difference between these three: long-term scheduler and short-term scheduler and medium-term scheduler, right? So when we see have seen the that structure of the process, where it is, yes, here. See, so they are saying scheduler dispatcher, right? So scheduler means what? They are explaining here. There is three types of schedulers are available: long-term scheduler, short-term scheduler, and medium-term scheduler. Okay. So the long-term scheduler is what? Long-term scheduler are those schedulers whose decision will have a long-term effect on the performance. Okay. So the duty of the long-term scheduler is to bring the process from the job pool to the ready state for its execution. Right? So as you know, this is also working of job scheduler, which is also known as long-term scheduler. As you have already seen, it selects processes from the job pool and loads them into the memory. Okay. They are saying it's also called job scheduler and is responsible for controlling the degree of multiplicity, that is total number of processes that are present in the ready queue. Clear? So the long-term scheduler decides which processes to be created to put into the ready state. So this is the long-term scheduler. Now after this, they are explaining short-term scheduler. So short-term scheduler are those schedulers whose decisions will have a short-term effect on the performance of the system. Right? This is also known as CPU scheduler and is responsible for selecting one process from the ready state for scheduling it on the running state. And that we have also seen in the definition of the CPU scheduler. It selects processes from the memory and allocated CPU for them. Right? So this is the short-term scheduler. So short-term scheduler is also known as CPU scheduler and is responsible for selecting one process from the ready state for scheduling it on the running state. Now after this we can see, here we can see long-term scheduler and short-term scheduler's difference. Right? We have job pool. It will give all the processes from the job pool and load them into the memory ready queue. Then short-term scheduler will select the processes from the memory and allocate to the CPU from the ready queue. Right? Now, the concept of medium-term scheduler is medium-term schedulers or those schedulers whose decision will have a mid-term effect on the performance of the system. Okay. It is responsible swapping of a process from a main memory to secondary memory and vice versa. So they are saying are those schedulers whose decision will have a mid-term effect on the performance of the system, and they are responsible for swapping of a process from main memory to secondary memory or secondary to main memory when the page is required. Okay, so this is the working of the medium-term scheduler. So now there is all three types of schedulers we have seen here. right? Also on other websites, they've given the differences also, so you can write the difference or we can say comparison. Now, they are also explaining the difference between scheduler and dispatcher. Okay, difference between the scheduler and dispatcher. So in the process state diagram, here we are seeing these two words, scheduler and dispatch. Okay, so we have seen the meaning of scheduler, that is divided into three parts. Now, what is the meaning of dispatcher and the difference between both? So here we can see what is dispatcher is. They are saying a dispatcher is a special program which comes into play after the scheduler. When the scheduler completes its job of selecting a process, it is the dispatcher which takes the process to the desired state or queue. So the dispatcher is the module that gives a process control over the CPU after it has been selected by the short-term scheduler. So after the working of the short-term scheduler क्या कर रहा है कि process को select करके CPU को allocate कर रहा है ना from the memory and allocate CPU. That is the functioning of the short-term scheduler. After that, the dispatcher will select the process and then it dispatch to the desired state or queue. Okay, so dispatcher is the module that gives the process control over the CPU after it has been selected by the short-term scheduler, right? So here we can see the difference between scheduler and dispatcher. They are saying various processes which are in the ready queue waiting to be executed. Okay, so CPU cannot execute all these processes simultaneously. So the operating system has to choose a particular process on the basis of the scheduling algorithm used. So this procedure of selecting a process among various processes is done by the scheduler. This is clear? This is clear?
Yes, ma'am.
I hope this is clear to everyone. ये अभी तक दिख रहा है. Clear? The difference between scheduler and dispatcher. So after this scheduler, once the scheduler has selected a process from the queue, the dispatcher comes into the picture and it is the dispatcher who takes this process from the ready queue and moves it into the running state. Clear? That is also shown here. So from ready to running state, dispatcher will send the that process, right? That they have written here. So scheduler has selected a process from the queue. The dispatcher comes into the picture and it is dispatch who takes the process from the ready queue and moves it into the running state. Okay? Therefore, the scheduler gives the dispatcher an order list of processes which the dispatcher moves to the CPU over time. Right? So this is the difference between scheduler and dispatcher that you can write in the words also. The difference between scheduler and dispatcher. So now for all these works we need some scheduling algorithms, right? So because of that we have some scheduling algorithm to on the basis of some scheduling criteria we can choose a method. Various methods are available and we can choose a single method which is better or on the basis of their working we can select various methods, right? So here there is an various scheduling criteria they have given. On the basis of we can compare the scheduling algorithm, and as per the result of those algorithms, a system can use the principle of scheduling to schedule the CPU for the execution of various number of processes. Clear? So now here is the various scheduling criteria, or we can say main criteria used for comparing the CPU scheduling algorithm. Clear? Okay? So now the first scheduling criteria is for comparing the CPU scheduling algorithm. Here we can write for comparing the CPU scheduling algorithms. Okay? So there is a scheduling criteria for comparing the various CPU scheduling algorithms. So the first criteria which is given is CPU utilization. Okay? So CPU utilization means keep the CPU as busy as possible, right? Because we are having one single CPU and the multiple processes, but the speed of CPU is very fast. So we have to keep CPU as busy as possible. That is the first criteria, which is CPU utilization. So they are saying CPU utilization may range from 0 to 100%. Okay, and it in the real-time system it should range from 40% to 90%. From a lightly loaded system to the heavily used system, right? So the CPU utilization means keep the CPU as busy as possible, right? This is the first criteria of the scheduling algorithm. Then the second criteria is they are saying throughput. So throughput means what? The number of processes that complete their execution per unit time. So they are saying if the CPU is busy executing processes, then work is being done. So measure of work is the number of processes completed per unit time. That is called the throughput. Clear? Clear? So one measure of work is the number of processes completed per time unit. This is called the throughput. This is the second criteria for the CPU scheduling algorithm. Now the third criteria is turnaround time. So turnaround time means amount of time to execute a particular process. Means the interval from the time of submission of a process to the time of completion. That is the turnaround time. Clear? They have written here amount of time to execute a particular process. So turnaround time is the sum of the periods spent waiting to get into memory, waiting in the ready queue, executing on the CPU, and doing input output, right? So the complete time, which is known as turnaround time, up to the process will complete the executions. Now the next is waiting time. So the waiting time is what? The amount of time a process has been waiting in the ready queue. That is the waiting time. Okay. Then the next is response time. So response time is amount of time it takes from when a request was submitted until the first response is produced, right? Not output. So that is the response time. So on the basis of these 5 criteria for the scheduling algorithm, we will see various scheduling algorithms available and the functioning of the scheduling algorithm, and on the basis of we can compare the various characteristics of the scheduling algorithms, right? So in this, the first algorithm we have, that is the first in, first out algorithm. Okay. So first in, first out algorithm is the algorithm in which the job which comes first in ready queue is executed first by the CPU. That is the concept of the first in, first out. Just wait, I'm opening that page. Okay, just wait. So the various scheduling algorithms available. The first is first come first serve scheduling. Then the second is shortest job first. Then the third is shortest remaining time first. Then the priority scheduling, round robin scheduling, multi-level queue scheduling, and multi-level feedback queue scheduling. So these are the various scheduling algorithms available. We'll see the function of the algorithms. Then we can compare these number of algorithm on the basis of various scheduling criteria which we have seen already. Yes, so now this is visible to everyone. Scheduling criteria.
No, ma'am.
Just wait. Now it is visible.
Yes, ma'am.
I think now it is visible. So here we have seen these five criteria for the scheduling. Now we can see here optimization criteria of scheduling algorithm. So the CPU utilization and throughput would be maximum, and the turnaround time. On the basis of this, here we can see the first algorithm. This is the simplest CPU scheduling algorithm. And the idea of this algorithm is that the job which comes first in ready queue is executed first by the CPU. Right? So here ready queue is considered as a first in, first out queue. So we can see here one of the snapshot is given of the system. Number of processes P1, P2 are in the system, and their execution time given or the burst time, which is 24, 3 and 3. So now these two things are in the this given. So here we can see no different arrival time is given, means all the process are having zero arrival time. Okay, means they all are in the system at the same time, that is zero. So now on the basis of this order we can make a Gantt chart for these processes this. So we'll arrange these processes as per the given burst time and on the basis of the principle of first in, first out queue. Okay, so we'll arrange these. So for the first is the P1 process. All the process arrived on the zero timing. So we'll start from the zero. Clear? Total execution time is 24. So P1 will take 24. Then after completion of P1, the next process will start execution. So P2 will start from the 24. Okay. And the total execution time is 3 because P1 was executing. So P2 have to wait till 24 when the P1 will complete its execution, right? Then P2 will start from the 24 and the burst time is 3. So 24 plus 3 up to 27, P2 will complete the execution. Now P3 will start from the 27 and the burst time is 3 again for the P3. So P3 will start from the 27. So up to 27, P3 was waiting for the execution. Now on 27, P3 got the timing of CPU and then started execution and up to 30 because 3 is the burst time for P3. So up to 30, it will complete its execution, right? So this is the Gantt chart which is showing the scheduling of the various number of processes which is available in the system. So as per this queue, process will executed by the CPU, right? So this is the first CPU scheduling algorithm which is known as first in, first out. Now on the basis of this chart, we can calculate the waiting time, right? So first of all, we'll write waiting time of every process, then we will calculate average waiting time of all the processes. So the waiting time for P1 is 0 because arrival time of all the process is 0 and initially P1 has started its execution from the 0. So P1 waiting time for P1 is 0, right? Then the waiting time for P2 is 24 because up to 24 P2 was waiting, right? And the waiting time for P3 is 27 because from the 27 P3 has started its execution. Clear? So these are the separate waiting time for all the processes. Then after getting average waiting time, the number is 17. So for this snapshot, we are getting average waiting time 17 as per the first in, first out algorithm. This is clear to everyone? So we can say advantage of the first come first serve is it is the simplest CPU scheduling algorithm. Okay? Then the disadvantage they are saying is the average waiting time is often long. Okay? Average waiting time is long, 17, as compared to other processes which we will see for the same snapshot, right? So because of that, they are saying it is not suitable for time sharing system, and this methods lead to convoy effects. So convoy effects means where all other processes wait for a long process to get off the CPU, right? We can see here P2 and P3 are having very, very less execution time as compared to P1, but they have to wait long because of the a big execution time of the P1, right? So this is known as the convoy effect. Clear? So now the another method we can see for the same snapshot, which is known as they are saying on the basis of shortest job first, right? The second algorithm, simple principle of the second algorithm. And the difference between primitive, non-primitive, we will see in the next class, right? So here, simplest functioning of the shortest job first is what? Whatever the process is having less execution time, it will execute first. That is the concept of this, right? So here we can see P2 are having less execution time, but both are having same execution time. So here we will apply the principle of first in, first out. So first P2 will execute it, then after P3. Clear? So we'll start from the P2. So here we have arranged in the Gantt chart P2. So P2 start from the 0 because arrival time is same for all the processes, 0. So P2 will start from the 0 and execution time of the P2 is 3, so 0 to 3. Then after completion of execution of P2, P3 will start from the 3 and it will complete on the 6, right? Then P1 will start because P1 is the last process which is available in the snapshot. So it will start from the 6 and it will complete execution up to 30. And now we will calculate the waiting time. So waiting time for P1 is what? 6. Okay. Then waiting time for P2 is 0. Waiting time for P3 is 3. So in this case, average waiting time is what? 6 plus 0 plus 3, that is 3. So this is giving much better than previous case, right? We can see difference here. Here we are getting 17 average waiting time and here we are getting 3, right? So this is known as the convoy effect. Short process behind long process, right? Or where all other processes wait for a long process to get off the CPU. That is the convoy effect. So this is the these two methods are clear. So again we will see the as there a shortage of first method on the basis of the primitive and non-primitive concepts, right? In the next class. So is there any doubt in this case? So I hope this is clear to everyone.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.